Well, everybody, I'm glad we're together again. Let's begin with a prayer and then we'll dive right into chapter 10 and have a discussion. So let's pray. God, we are grateful for your presence and grateful for the ways that we are inspired to live as your disciples, whether it's through conversation or through books or sermons or music or whatever it may be. We are grateful for the ways that you come and meet us where we are. In this time, we've dedicated ourselves to hear from you. So, Lord, speak and we will listen. It's through your Son, Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
So, chapter 10 is a shorter chapter than chapter 11, but it's just as good, I think. What stands out in that chapter for you all? I mean, it's one conversation with one person, so there's not a ton necessarily going on, but
I think the one of the statements, and we've all heard this all through life, I can forgive him as a Christian, but there are things I can never forget.
Yeah. Yeah, we've heard that, and some of us may live that still.
Yeah. Well,
how do you think that applies to her story from what we can see of it here anyway?
Oh, let me get into it a little bit more.
Yeah, no problem. While Dreama's pondering that, what else stood out to you all in this chapter?
How she was thinking she was doing so much for him. I think she did little to help the relationship at all. Very little. It was what she wanted.
Mm-hmm.
She was pushing everything that she wanted.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was trying to think the gist of it, of what she could forgive him for.
Mm-hmm.
What disappointed her, not doing everything she wanted him to do. But was that the crux of the matter? I have to look at it again.
I know. I think, well, we'll get to it. Any other pieces standing out before we dive into this a little deeper?
Yeah, I don't know if it's one of these pieces, but it's frustrating. Fact is, it's almost sad that every one of these people that we see, we seem to have known somebody like that. And you see the description of them, and you can almost say, oh, that's Mary so-and-so, or something like that. Or somebody you didn't even know, but in church, but you could hear them going on and on.
Or in your neighborhood or something.
Or yourself.
Hang on here. Hold on. Trying to step on toes here now. Yeah, and anyway, that's too far down the road here. I'll get to that later. But anyway, the manipulating and controlling, and getting, I guess, getting pleasure from controlling can be we see it all the time in smaller ways, but not in this way. She controlled his whole life.
Yeah.
And at the end, I mean, you empathize with the fellow and say, good night. Of course, he despised her at the end, I think.
Yeah.
But she was surprised to find that he was there somewhere.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting, though?
So we meet this woman, and she seems to be talking to her late husband's mother. And the mother sees only good in him, and that's sort of her perspective of this woman, and how she's the one that made a man out of him. She's the one that made him into something useful. She's the one who molded and shaped him into the image she had for him. And I think that's kind of the gist for this particular interaction. Is she had an idea of who her husband needed to be, and she decided she knew better than he did who he needed to be, and wouldn't let him be anybody else.
But he didn't appreciate it.
Right.
the
No one
journey.
appreciates it. We want to be ourselves.
Yeah, with no, well, with no thoughts of that he had uh, any desires of his own,
Mm,
do what she wanted to make him do.
yeah.
What a miserable life.
Yep.
Or if he did express his desires, she just completely ignored and bulldozed him for him. Like she's like, oh, he had some notions of writing a book, but I cured him of that in the end.
Cured him of
There
it.
was, there was one comment she made that she's while she's in hell, but she couldn't do anything with these people, meaning she couldn't manipulate them around like she could her son. I thought that was great.
Yeah, and that's sort of the end of her story there is she needs someone to do things to.
Yeah,
Mhm.
true.
Yeah.
And
Well,
then she said, why should he have his way about anything?
mhm. Yeah. Why should he have his own choice?
Yeah.
So we see this sort of relationship. And I mean, we see it in husbands and wives and husbands, and we see it in parents and children.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a very human relationship that we see where the self is not allowed to flourish apart from who I think or who the other person thinks that self should be.
I find it very often when a parents live through their children.
Hmm.
My father, and this came up today, I was talking to somebody. My father always, no, last night rather, my father always wanted me to be in show business. He wanted me to be a dancer. So he gave me dancing for years and years. Well, my self-image was as a baseball player, not a dancer, but he loved the stage. He loved New York and Broadway and so forth. So he didn't insist though.
But it didn't last till you were what, 10 or?
No, no, longer than that, because I was seventh grade. Seventh
Oh,
grade is
really? I
15,
didn't
yeah.
know that.
So 6 years, 6 years gave me 6 years of dance. And the next would have been ballet.
Okay, there's nothing wrong with that for a boy.
Yeah.
Would have been wonderful, of course. But,
Okay.
by the way, I went to the dermatologist today. She found nothing wrong. She said, "You're perfect." I said, I tell my wife that if only she would. She said, "Well, here, let me write you a note." She said, "He's perfect," and signed it.
I told him if it appears on the refrigerator, I'm done.
Oh, God.
Lee, we can't do anything with you.
Yeah, that's that was a really short chapter there,
It was.
especially after 9. Oh, there was one comment that what's his name?
McDonald?
McDonald.
That McDonald made that you can't love someone unless you love God. Or you can't unless you love God first, or you can't be loved or something like that.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he talks about love in the next chapter.
Okay. It says you can't. It's only possible to love someone truly selflessly by loving God first. I thought that was an interesting phrase there. I'm not.
Hmm.
That's new. Just a new thought to me. And
So I want to. There's another aspect to this character, to Robert, not necessarily the woman, but there's a point in this chapter, and I can't find it at the moment, but where you can see his will just die. Like I've given up. I'm just going to do whatever she wants me to do because I don't have a choice in the matter anymore. And you can almost read that in this story. And I want to say it's after he got the promotion and when they were looking for houses.
she overrode it.
Yeah, she just wore him down.
Mhm.
And we see that person. We see that person, not just the person who's being the manipulative person, but we see that person who they've just resigned themselves to whatever is going to come along, and okay, whatever you want, wherever you want to go.
And she said, and your precious Robert Hilda, all he cared about was food.
Right.
All he could control.
So Robert may be gaining weight, into his misery, really.
Hmm.
And of course, it's telling and sad. This has to be when he was getting older, when he would just sit and his eyes would be burning through her. He hated her. He despised her near the end because
Yeah.
he was never able to do anything.
He was never anything to her. And this speaks to love. To her, he was never anything more than just something to do things to, like a doll or a toy.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that that's a lesson in love, which we look into more in the next chapter, which is coming up. But it's love. Love seems to be, at least in this chapter, to me, love is allowing someone to be who they're created to be, not necessarily who you want them to be.
Mhm.
I don't know if that's coming across correctly or not, but that seems to be the lesson in this chapter for me.
Yeah. I've learned whenever you have someone who is in a relationship like that, and one of them is the bad guy, at least you decide one of them's the bad guy, to look at that person. How did that person become the bad guy? What influences in his life made him the bad guy? So when you think about the woman in this instance, could it be that she never had control growing up? She was a woman in a period when women didn't have all the rights they have now.
Mhm.
Did she chafe under that? And so here, this little thing comes along, her son, and she can control him, and that's sort of the way it went.
I
Just a
thought it
thought.
was very sad when she said, and they, I think this was it, they invited younger men to the house, maybe coworkers, and it's as if they would laugh, they liked her better than him, and they would laugh behind his back, so to speak.
Yeah.
I thought that was very, very sad.
She says something, I can't help if the younger men liked me more or something like that. Yeah.
So she's having to always build herself up. She
Mhm.
needs her self-image.
Yeah. Jen, any thoughts on this chapter?
Not much different than what you guys have been saying. I did like at the end how she said, I will take up my burden once more. Like it was some heavy weight to carry this man along and make him the way he needed to be, when you can just read by how she talks about him, how exhausting she must have been to live with, and how that, you know, she put everything on herself to be however she wanted it to be, and he had absolutely no choice. You know, she doesn't see how miserable she made him.
It didn't matter. It didn't matter to her.
Yeah. And it may have been she was one of those driven people who had her dreams for what they should be, and he was not that type A personality, and she wanted him to be. And so she drove him. I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to think of other sorts of circumstances where this could play out,
Oh,
where she
husbands and
wanted to
wives.
be with. Yeah,
Husbands and wives, sure, yeah.
yeah,
But she wants him back in the end.
yeah. But she's willing to take him back. I really like how it's written in the sense of, and Jen, you got it spot on with.
Mhm.
I'm willing to take up the burden again. No, those aren't the exact words, but that's the emotion behind them. Is I will take my cross and I will carry it with me into paradise,
Right.
kind of thing.
Yeah. That's the sense I get from it too.
But only if I get to have a free hand, only if I get to do what I want with him. Which goes back to the idea that we try to make people into the image we want them to be, not who God has made them to be or who God calls them to be.
Mhm.
And in the end, she wanted him back,
Mm-hmm.
and they didn't want to, somebody else wanted him.
She just, I think she couldn't give up manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
That's her pattern in life. And
Yeah,
I mean, again, back to the comment she said, when in hell, she couldn't do anything with them.
Mm-hmm.
Give me Robert.
Yeah. She lived to manipulate. And when she couldn't manipulate, it was hell.
yeah.
Literally. Let's move into chapter 11 and talk about that, because there's a few scenes in there, and I hope we have enough time to get through them all. So after that woman disappears, we get another woman. And this one seems to be greeted, the bright person who greets her is her brother.
Mhm.
And she's looking for her son. She expects to see her son. But she's greeted by her brother. And this conversation goes on for several pages.
Mhm.
Is there anything in that interaction that you all wanted to talk about before I try and get to any particulars in there?
I thought it was interesting because she is a mother who has lost a child, and how she existed for that. You know, she claimed Michael, I think is his name, as hers, and her brother's trying to explain he's God's creature, he's not really yours. As a mom, it's hard to do that. I try. I don't always succeed at this, but I do try to remember that these kids that I have, while my body grew them and birthed them, and I didn't truly create them. They're not completely mine. I am in charge of shepherding them and caring for them and loving them, but ultimately they don't belong to me. So I think that was something that she had a hard time understanding. This is my boy. I should be able to see him. But and then at the same time, that I have no idea what it's like to grieve a child dying. My brother lost his son last year, but that was something that we expected. We were waiting for that, and of course, I don't know what happened in this story, but she just did not seem to be able to get past it. So,
Yeah.
and it sounded like, and I don't remember if this is right or not, that it destroyed the rest of her family.
Mm-hmm.
She just couldn't get over it.
Yeah.
Really can destroy.
Say that again, Drew. I didn't hear you.
Can destroy a. I know one instance where the child had some emotional to mental problems, to anorexia, suicide attempt. The mother was much more involved emotionally than the father.
I can hardly hear you, Dreama.
Character to be close once still. And he didn't understand the illness, for one thing. But her daughter eventually took her life, and it just about destroyed the mother.
Mm-hmm.
Her daughter had been her life. She was always Mother Lion, protect her from everybody, even the father. Some mothers and situations.
The relationship is sort of like chapter 10 also.
Oh.
Controlling and influencing.
But Jen, I've lived long enough to see families that they maybe the moms more than the dads lived their life, the kids' life through them, right along through sports or whatever, dance or whatever. And when all the children left, there wasn't anything left of the marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And you hear them splitting up, after 20 years or something. Or they might go in and build a house or do something big or whatever. But, it's as if they forgot to build the relationship between husband and wife while they were raising their children.
Yeah.
We've
I don't know if I said that very well.
no, we've said that and joked many times about people get married and then they get bored after a while. So let's have a kid. So then they have a kid to keep things going again, and things. I'm not sure things will die down after that. But let's have another kid. That's the idea. Is always have a project. Always have a project.
And the kids are their project.
Yeah, the kids are their project. And then what you said is after they're gone, it's always an issue. After they're gone, what do we have left? And we've read many times that sometimes like the death of a child, or whatever, it either cements their relationship or it makes, or this is praise. I know of a mother who, a boy I grew up with, and he died. I don't know how he remember now how he died, but the mother jumped in the grave, tried to jump into the grave at his funeral. And it was a miserable time thereafter for, and I think they separated after that, mother and father.
It's something, well, it's something that can, losing a child is just about one of the worst things that can happen.
Yeah, I can't imagine what losing a child is like.
Either.
And yet in this character, it's like her life just stopped. Like there was nothing worth living for anymore. There was nothing good that could ever happen again. And I see people who get stuck in that grief,
Yeah.
in that place, and they're not able to move on. It could be the loss of a job, it can be the loss of a child, which are not equal, but grief is grief, and grief does things to people in weird ways.
That's what it does.
Some people retire and they lose all connection to reality. Nothing's ever good is gonna happen again. And it seems like that's what this character is experiencing, is a stuckness.
And a part of that is she isolated herself.
Mhm.
She didn't try to have relationships elsewhere. Like you said, she was just stuck there. But the isolation, of course, would be part of that whole process.
You gotta get over it, you get through it.
Yeah. And the way that she interprets life is interesting here. She looks at everything for Michael, and she lost Michael, but everything was about Michael. And like Jen, you pointed out that her husband and her daughter, basically their lives were miserable because of the way that she would carry on and go about her days and not leave the house, not leave the house, but not sell the house and move somewhere where they could live and start doing something different and moving forward.
Giving his exactly how it was and not moving anything,
Mm-hmm.
keeping it like he was still coming home or something.
It must be a real burden on a child to be loved that much as they get older.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Dreama and Lee, I don't know if there's something on top of the microphone near your computer or not, but it sounds like we're hearing you through you're talking into a cup.
Is it any better now?
Yes, it's a little better now.
Just moved a piece of paper.
Ah. Amazing.
Thank you.
No, you're welcome. That's helping us hear you better also.
We had talking about issues like this or experiences we've had like this. Dream and I just came up with the thing that it's just not right for a child to die before his parent.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of in the grander scheme of things. It's just not right. It's one of the things that shouldn't happen. And so much the pain for that. I've tried to empathize with someone who's lost a child, especially if the child had his own bedroom. Would I really want to change anything in that bedroom? I think it'd have to be to go in and change everything, or want to leave it as it was. I don't know.
The thing is that you find out later that it was a accident. This child wasn't planned and wasn't happy about that.
Yeah. Yeah, we find that out. And she real quick snaps at the brother and then moves on. Like, how'd you know about that? And then she continues on.
Yeah.
Like it would be sacrilegious almost for her to admit that truth to herself.
Well, there are a lot of babies born pregnancies unexpected.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to shift our conversation a little bit into this mother love. And we talk, McDonald talks about it, and the bright person, her brother, talks about the corruption of mother love. How great it is, but when it's corrupted, how horrible it can be. And so, in reading this and reflecting a little bit on this, how do you see the corruption of a mother's love in this character?
Well, how it affects the rest of the family,
Hmm.
the husband, the siblings. Uh, it certainly corrupted their lives many times. Well, I know that one case, the second child of the person I know was sort of ignored.
Hmm.
Fared very well being ignored, actually. Um, just the type of child she was. But in retrospect, she was ignored.
Hmm.
And the husband, he just wasn't sympathetic or didn't know anything, but and it affected a lot of people,
Mhm.
not just the family, it affected other people too. So,
There's a daughter, right?
In the story, it was a daughter and a husband. Yeah.
No, I thought that was daughter. I was gonna say, you know, when we were talking about the pressure on the child and Michael, the other one is how bereft of love the second one is, unless she and the father can form an alliance, so to speak, and but it's difficult.
but think what it does to the daughter's life from then on,
Mhm.
how it affected her life moving forward as
Yeah.
well.
Any other thoughts? The corruption of parental love, mother love is how it's in here, but
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Okay, I'd say it seemed clear that she obviously had a favorite with Michael, and I know that there's a certain kind of bond between a mother and a son, just like there is for a daughter and a father. Um, but you shouldn't play favorites. You shouldn't have a favorite, and even if you do, you shouldn't tell your other kid, or at least let them know that the other one is the favorite. Because then that just wrecks the entire relationship.
Wow.
I think the foundation is treating is how you treat them, though. Obviously, you can have a favorite, but as long as instances I've known is where the parents individually spend time with every child. So even though you may have a favorite, this is how you treat them, I think, is a big deal. And this one here, I was thinking the mother sort of saw Michael as an extension of herself, not so much trying to be the whatever thing she wanted to do as a person, but just saw him as an extension of herself, and used to have it like a symbiotic relationship.
I'm
Well, it's almost like go ahead, Lee, Trina.
Go ahead, Jen.
Okay. It was almost like she forgot who she was and who her identity was, and that got all wrapped up into her child, so that when he was gone, she didn't even know how to be herself.
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know. Do you think that parents have favorites, or is it? I've often thought one personality, you have more than one child, one of them's personality is easier for you
Mm.
than another one. Might not be that it's a favorite, but it seems easier. You're more compatible at times.
I would agree with you on that. Like I wouldn't say I have a favorite. I mean, people who know me might speak differently. But my second daughter, Elsa, is almost a carbon copy of me. And it's very easy to get along with her because I understand how she thinks. And, whereas Josiah is just a ball of energy from the time he gets up to the time he goes to bed. But he's also very precious to me,
Mhm.
and then Shia is my oldest, and we had her, and then 5 years later we had Elsa. So we had her for the longest by herself. It's just they have their own personalities, and you love them in their own way, not necessarily a favoritism kind of way. It's just it's the same. Love is different. You love your spouse differently than you love your parents or your kids or your best friend. It's how you express it, I think, with those people.
Well, I have the joy of having grown sons, and the one I'm more compatible with, I have different conversations with him one-on-one the other ones, but each one of them now, I really appreciate the part of their personality that I go to for certain things.
Yeah.
You know, and it doesn't, they each have a gift. I'll just put it that way.
Mhm.
I'm enjoying that.
Yeah, and I appreciate your insight into all of this, because the thing that I was thinking about with this corruption is that she seems to have enshrined and ritualized and turned Michael into God.
Yeah.
And that's how I was thinking about it, because there's a word in there, the ritual of it all, the room having to be perfect and never leaving the house, and all of the ways that she'd speak of Michael. And it's just, that's where my mind went with it, was the idea that this loss was turned into divine for her and then perfected, and she couldn't let go of it because that was her idea of God, and that wasn't God. It was just she turned Michael into God.
One of the
There's
basic words for idolatry, she idolizes him.
Yeah,
Mhm.
made an idol.
I'll tell you something that you all might think is sacrilegious for me to say it, but I know a family that had a son and it was everything about him and not the other grandchildren. And so somebody in the family nicknamed him behind the back Baby Jesus, Jesus of the family.
Oh,
Yeah, well, and that's, yeah. And so I love that we don't get to see the end of this story. Like, we don't get to see it, and MacDonald, the Scotsman, takes him away, and he's like, this one's going to be a long one. We don't have time to stick around for this. And then they have a conversation about, well, what's going on, and is there hope? And then he talks about love, and I love Lewis in the voice of this character. He says, I don't know that I dare repeat this on earth, sir. They'd say I was inhuman. They'd say I believed in total depravity. They'd say I was attacking the best and the holiest of things. They'd call me. And then MacDonald's response just floors me. I love it. It might do you no harm if they did. He's like, so what?
And we skipped right by one thing that I was interested in. Talking about her is one thing, and you get along with some of your children better than others, with personalities that just fit together. But I've heard for a long time anyway. You rate a child sometimes, sometimes. Let me see if I can say this. Sometimes the parents just doesn't like the child. His personality is one thing, and he doesn't like the way that the kid is, and that's if you can still raise a good child like that, you've done pretty well, I think.
Yeah. I was talking to, I mean, sometimes the parent or the guardian resents the child, or, I mean, which is hatred in many cases. And so there is that relationship that exists also. We don't see that here, but that is a truth. That is very hard for a lot of people to live with.
I've seen the stepchild issue played out many times.
Yeah.
it says here that she loved her son too little, not too much.
Yeah.
If she loved him more, there'd be no difficulty.
What do you think that means? Or what does it mean to you, Kathy?
If she loved him, she would, I think, be able to move on at her, and believing that he would be in heaven and that he would be safe. And thankful that she had him as long as she did. And I don't know, that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah. No.
If she loved him too little, does that mean that she didn't love him in the right way? Healthy way? Loved him?
Well, maybe that was the problem with her not being able to move on and being stuck in the past, is the way that they put it. is that if she did love him too little, then maybe she had this guilt. And that's why she kept everything kind of as a shrine to make herself feel better.
Yeah.
You know, it always seems like once someone dies, you only think about the good things that they did, even if they weren't nice all the time or actually just horrible to be around, you know. But once they die, you want to make sure you say the nice things, you know. So
Yeah. I had someone tell me when I was working as a hospice chaplain, everyone becomes a saint when they die, no matter how they lived their lives. And that this could even be, and I mean, without psychoanalyzing the character in a fictional story, she could be, I mean, if this was an accidental pregnancy, maybe she resented the pregnancy and hated the child and wished that it would never have, she would have never gotten pregnant. And then when he died, she may have had her own guilt with that. And I mean, like I said, without psychoanalyzing a character, but trying to look into this reality as if this person is a real human being, there's a lot that can go into it like that.
Well, dealing too with love for God that he talks about, it seems like somewhere in there, it was like she was having a transaction with God that I'll love God if I can get to Reginald. I mean, to Michael. Yeah. So it's like a transaction. Give me this and I'll give you that, so to speak.
And the bright person calls her out on that too. The bright person says, no, you can't have Michael that way. You need to have God first.
Yeah.
And then you'll begin to be able to see Michael and be seen by Michael.
Is this where McDonald puts his arm around? Is that next one?
No, that's next.
Next one, okay.
And so, let's see. Moving forward, because we are Tempus Fugit, moving forward, the McDonald and the character have their little interaction about love, which is not a little interaction and really deserves an entire time of us just sitting and talking about what love means. But I want to get to the point where we talk about the person with the lizard on their shoulder, and at least talk about that a little bit tonight. Because we haven't, thus far in the story, we haven't seen what people might characterize as demons. And that might be what this lizard is. We don't know. But this is a manifestation of something that person doesn't want to give up. Whether that's a demon or something else, we don't know. It gets called lust later on, but I want to talk about that story a little bit. What were your impressions of that character, that story, how it played out?
I really liked this one because it was the first time somebody actually was willing to give up something that someone else is asking for. And the angel asks several times, and I think all he ever says is, "May I kill it? May I kill it?" You know, the guy has all his excuses or reasons, and that he just keeps asking the same thing. But something that it reminded me of was in Lord of the Rings, when Bilbo leaves the ring for Frodo and then forgets that it's in his pocket, and Gandalf tries to take it from him, and Bilbo gets all upset, and Gandalf kind of says, "I'm not trying to rob you, I'm trying to help you." And I've always kind of seen the ring as a symbol for sin, where it's something that we covet, that we want, that's precious to us, and it corrupts us and keeps us from being able to change. And then you have someone like Gandalf who comes in and knows what it is that you're coveting and says, "You need to get rid of this because actually it's hurting you, not helping you." And I kind of saw the same thing here with this lizard. It's tiny, it just sits on his shoulder, and the angel's like, I need to kill this thing. We need to get rid of it.
Yeah. Good illustration there. I appreciate the Lord of the Rings. And you're right.
I thought you would.
I think it's another beautiful illustration of something that we take with us that corrupts us, that the only way to get rid of it is to give it up. And it's really hard to do that.
Is it like this is something that's not good for me, but I need to give it up, but I can't let go?
Yeah.
Like any addiction, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alcohol, same thing. I know I should give it up, but until the next bout comes and I've got to have a drink or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, spending, earning. I mean, there's all sorts of addictions. Our society kind of forms us so that we get addicted to all sorts of different things. Some of them are just more socially acceptable than others.
Yeah.
I would be happy to say that well, not happy. I am not ashamed to say I'm addicted to caffeine, and my society really encourages that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, food can be an addiction.
Food, oh yeah.
Well,
Expensive food, fancy food, sugary food.
obviously, in dealing with addictions, I always mention food. And it's been described before that our culture, rather, has been described as food toxic.
Mhm.
Because you can't go anywhere without something, on a screen or somewhere you read it, advertising something that's just yummy and good. Dreamer brought the little crackers, the toasted kind of things, and she bought the cream cheese, wasn't it cream
Cream
cheese?
cheese.
Well, anyway, and I didn't care about those. We were dipping them and so forth. And then I found out pretty soon. I said, "Don't ever buy those again," as I'm dipping into my bag again. I think the food people know what tastes are just you can't. They're a habit for me.
Well, we know how to get people to church. We feed them.
But I had a colleague in seminary from Central Africa who'd say, all you Americans do is eat. You eat at your meetings, you eat in your classes, you eat at your homes, you eat in your, and it is just ludicrous to him. He says, no wonder you're all overweight.
Do we meet to eat or eat to meet?
Yeah. But I want to get back to this person with the lizard. And when the angel draws close to the guy, he says, oh, you're hurting me.
Yeah.
And the angel says, well, I didn't say this was going to be a painless surgery.
Say it wouldn't kill you. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that we withdraw from.
But I thought he was annoyed by his noise.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if it was a lust type of thing, then why would he be annoying him?
Well, I think what it is this lizard has been a part of him for so long. He hates it, but he can't imagine himself without it.
Well, isn't that just like, again, I'm thinking about alcohol. Isn't that sounds like exactly the same thing, You
Okay.
don't want to do it, but you do.
And he wanted to go back to the bus and get an opinion from somebody else.
Yeah. Because he wasn't willing to give that up yet.
Yeah.
And the little voice, the little lizard whispering in his ear was convincing him of those things. And I don't know about you and as far as giving things up, but I have a little voice that whispers in my ear about giving things up that I don't want to give up, but I know that I'll be better if I do.
Yeah.
And giving up those things is painful. I mean, literally so in some cases. Like talking about sugar, I know people that have transitioned their diet off of manufactured sugar, and they literally have a headache for a week or so while their body goes through withdrawal symptoms.
Because he said, if you kill it, you'll kill me too.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's part of why I love this scene, is because the angel is trying to help him.
Mhm.
He says, I'll kill it. I can do that, but I can't do that unless you tell me that's what you really want, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it against your will.
I know. I thought that was something that stood out to me. I can't if it's against your will.
I like that it was painful too to get rid of the lizard. He finally realizes like it would be better to be dead than to live with this creature. But getting rid of it was incredibly painful for him. He was actually in agony. And I think that's true of anything that you've held on to for so long that you're not supposed to. It is painful to get rid of it.
Yeah. And then the very thing that was killed is the thing that bears him on into God's presence. It's killed and then transformed. And I think that Lewis is writing that, and he talked about it a little bit in his introduction to this book, about how the things the things that were hell, when we look back on them, direct us toward God or something like that. I don't know the exact words of it, but the idea is that the things that were a pain for us, or were a struggle for us, or were a burden for us, were the very things that pointed us and carried us to God. And I think I see that here with the lizard becoming a horse, the most beautiful horse and the fastest horse, just quickly carrying this new bright person into God's presence.
I had difficulty with the symbology there, but anyway, from what you just said, it sounds like whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger, or any kind of resistance you eventually put up with something, or getting out of an addiction and so forth, you become stronger.
I recognize this with someone who holds on to anger, grief, any strong emotions, and they won't let go of it.
Mm.
They just hold on to it because that's all they have.
Mm.
If they let go of it, what do they have? You know, and if they turn that back to God, if they believed before, because I think you're robbed of God of filling your life with God when you hold on to those emotions. It becomes so powerful.
Yeah.
But there's a void after. And if you can fill it with God, that's wonderful. But I think there is that feeling of, they hold on to it for so long, especially there's one hatred of somebody.
Yeah.
It can fill your life.
Mm.
And if you give it up, if you forgive and give it up, what do you have? Hopefully you find joy.
Of freedom.
Freedom. Yeah.
Well, again, so often we read about slavery. You're
Yeah.
slave in, and that can be so many ways.
Yeah, I think one of the ways that I think of this, and I think this may be the way Lewis was intending it. I can't say that for sure, but is the idea that whatever the lizard was something that was corrupted, something beautiful that had been corrupted. And then when it was killed, it was resurrected, and it was no longer in its corrupted state. And then it was able to carry the person on into life. And I think it might be McDonald. It may be in here that says that was lust, and lust is love perverted. And then he goes, how much more beautiful would a mother's love be once it is redeemed, or once it is put to death and resurrected? That's sort of the idea that I remember from this anyway. And that gets back to the excess of love, too little, too much. Yeah. You must draw another lesson. You must ask, if the risen body, even of appetite, is as grand a horse as you saw, what would the risen body of maternal love or friendship be? So it's that corrupted thing, not so much the whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger, as much as it is, there's this thing that is beautiful and wonderful that has been corrupted, that when it's redeemed becomes something beautiful and majestic.
I just liked that it turned into this beautiful horse. Like, what a huge drastic comparison between a lizard that can sit on your shoulder and a horse that can carry you off and take you anywhere. And the relationship that you can have with an animal like that, where you can actually talk to it and build a friendship. Whereas with a lizard, it's a reptile. It's not really gonna, love you like, like having a dog or a cat. But anyone who works with horses will tell you they have their own personalities, and you can bond with them and make a relationship with them. And I just thought it was such a beautiful picture, that how grateful that ghost was for that lizard to turn into a horse.
Yeah. Now, I have to say this because I have friends that love reptiles and amphibians, but they also have their own personalities. Their relationship is not the same as it is with a horse.
I'm sure that's true. I didn't mean to say that reptiles have no feelings. I'm sure they do. I just have never been friends with reptiles.
Right. in college, I had a bearded dragon, and it would wave to me and bob its head when I'd walk into the room.
Oh, that's cute.
I think that it knew that when I was coming into the room, I might have a chance that I would feed it, but anyway,
And don't forget, I need my food.
Thing's right. Hey, I'm over here. Feed me. Yeah. Well, that's it for our time for tonight. Thanks everybody for participating in the conversation. And next week we'll do 2 more chapters, 11 or not 11. We'll do 12 and 13 for next week. And that'll put us almost to the end of the book.
And I think we're not going to be available. It's possible for the last chapter. We'll see.
Okay.
I don't know how the internet is going to be, how strong it is where we'll be. It wasn't very strong before.
Well, my book doesn't have a table of contents. How many chapters do we have in the books? We could.
Well, we've 12, 13, 14.
Okay.
I think there's 14.
Yeah, there's 14. We could just finish out the book.
I mean, they're not very long.
We could try to finish out the book next
And
week.
14 in my, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I was gonna say, we could let you know if we're not gonna be able to be here, so y'all could just cancel the class.
That's also an option.
No, it's up to you if you think we can cover it, CJ.
Let's try and do 12. Let's try and finish the book next week. And if we don't, then we'll just finish it another week.
Okay. All right, good enough.
Yeah, but we don't know the end.
Yeah, we will. We'll tune into the recorded session.
There you go. Thank you, everybody. God bless you.
Bye-bye.
About
Bye-bye.